I'm giving the service today, Humanist View of Life, Death, Suicide, and Honorable Choices. And I want to just remind people that I am an atheist, and a humanist, but I am not against Christians, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, whoever. I believe that there are a huge number in each group of good people who want justice, who want truth, and who want a significant amount of caring throughout the world. However, be that as it may, I want to talk about myself a bit and why I'm where I'm at as a humanist and an atheist. I do wake up most mornings recently feeling mildly depressed. It's true. The day has, when I wake up, I think the day has little to offer me. And I strive to find projects that have merit, and I often do. With a project, I shift and can feel released from the oppression of darker feelings. And why darker feelings? Two major reasons. They're both intertwined. One is the deaths of people that I know and I've cared for, and my age of 85 years. Of course, my mom and dad died. I'm 85, and of course my mom and dad died. My brother died. He was slightly older than me. He died in his 50s. I had two wives prior to Kathy. Kathy is not my third wife. She's my last wife.
No.
And while there were some unpleasantries with the previous wives, I have many, many good feelings about them. We had some excellent times. I had two good friends in college. I roomed with them. And subsequently, one, while I was in college, committed suicide. Another, some years after college, that I remained very close to, committed suicide. I sometimes have wondered, do I have an affinity for people who are troubled? And I think I do. However, I certainly have a lot of friends and others who are not suicidal and are in good mental health. I've had three very close friends through my life. Actually four, including the guy in college. But the first was Marty Black, and oh boy, we went on vacations together. We went on business together, and he knew all about my life, and I knew all about his. He supported me so well, and I supported him. And he's dead. He died many years ago. He was about my age. I had another friend, Al Yeomans, and he used to visit me usually once or twice a week, and we'd talk for hours. And we'd laugh and talk and talk and talk and talk. And he died. He died about 6 years ago now, I think. 4, sorry. 4. Okay. And he had cancer. And then Al Gelderman, a physician friend that I developed about after Al Yeomans died. And I would see him once or twice a week, and we would talk and talk and talk. And it was so good. It was so bonding and strong. And he committed suicide. He put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. And he left me a message on my answering machine. And I still have images of him. I have images. I can wake up in the morning and hear his voice saying things. I dream about him. And I certainly have images of his death. That stuff hurts. It does hurt. That's part of human living. It's part of caring. So, the other side is, of course, I have a lot to live for. I have a most excellent wife, and we're caring of each other. We do a lot for each other. She's there for me, and I know it. I have a best friend who lives right next door. I gave her some land and said, please move here, and she did. And she's been a friend for 35 years. And that's to the good. And I told you a couple of weeks ago about my 93-year-old woman who knew that I was mourning for Al Gelderman and took me out to see trillions and bluebells and talked about renewal. Here she is with a cane, and we walked about a quarter of a mile to see the bluebells. Oh gosh. Friendships can be so good. They can be so good and helpful. So, what is my complaint? Well, here's where you might just join me. My complaint is that I mourn, I miss people that I have loved. For some of you who are young, that may not have happened to you, or happened and it's kind of faded away. But as you get older, it occurs more frequently, you know. So many of those that I have loved have gone. They've died in one way or another. And for me, the complaint is I'm old, and the plans for my future are limited. I still have some good plans, yes, but they're really limited. And I worry more. I worry more about my health. I'm obsessed about it. And my health is more precarious, and I am wearing out. I know that. There are all kinds of signs, you know. Fake teeth, fake eyes, fake ears when I can get them, fake knees. It's like, maybe I'll be the bionic man. But in addition to all of those things, I want answers to some of the most difficult questions of life. I need to understand about life and death and suicide. I want answers. Here is where some of you may join me. I believe that many people want answers to those kinds of questions too. I cannot find the answers for you. I can't. But I can share my thoughts on elemental and vital questions that are too often discussed from a mythical or unreal or ultimately unbelievable point of view. Unbelievable point of view. From a humanist point of view, oftentimes the answers are from mythical. So, perhaps my ideas might help others to find their own path. Where do I start? I am an atheist and a humanist. I am a retired scientist. I'm not sure if some of you may know, I was a forensic psychologist, but I didn't publish a great deal, but I published 8 different publications in good magazines. And science can provide a kind of truth, but it's a limited truth. Science doesn't explore questions that cannot at some point in time be answered empirically. That means that at some point in time you use your sight, your hearing, your touch. In some way you use your senses to establish what's true. And of course the senses are enhanced because we have great instruments, simple things like telescopes and microscopes, but a horrendous array of instruments that allow us now to go way beyond what our senses could 300 years ago tell us. And but we can't explore, as scientists, we can't explore whether fairies or ghosts or God exists. We can't demonstrate to a group of skeptical scientists that these mythical entities can actually be seen or heard or sensed, even with the most sensitive instruments. However, we've gone a long ways. We now are able to study the minutest things like atoms and their elemental parts such as neutrons and electrons and protons that were unseen and unknown a couple hundred years ago. We can create new organic life that will reproduce itself out of inorganic matter. We can take chemicals that are from iron and so forth and produce life. We can tickle DNA to create new species of wheat or fish or fowl. I was reading just a few days ago that we now are able to produce veal in a petri dish, and it goes now for about $500 a pound. But that beef in a petri dish, we can produce it. And it won't be too long before that kind of thing is going to be on the grocery shelf. We have demonstrated fantastic abilities that just a few centuries ago humans thought only God possessed. We have these abilities that are fantastic. Yet, still, we may never be able to live beyond death. For most of us, our narcissistic passion for living necessitates that we understand life and death. As a species, we have been on a glorious journey, it's true. We have subdued almost all the other species that threaten us. We live on all the continents. We can even survive underwater and in space. But there are still limits to our science. We still want to understand the reasons, the meanings of our lives. I would reconsider my atheism if a God could come down and say, I will cure all the sick today. There will not be sickness. Or if a God could come down and say, look, your wars are atrocious. I'm going to solve the problem. I'm going to make it so that no weapon will fire. Omnipotence could do that, of course.
How about just high?
And I would reconsider if somehow a God could come down. But somehow I don't think that's going to occur. And so my atheism continues. Again, I am not looking down on good Christians who, I believe, aid this world in significant ways, in ways that humanists would certainly approve of. So, what does an atheist and a humanist view as the meaning of life? First, I want to talk about some accepted scientific information about our species that's important to have a context, for where humanists stand. We're a self-replicating species who has evolved, and we've become more complex. Subsystem over subsystem can unfold until we are layered into self-consciousness. Self-consciousness. We're aware of ourselves. We're aware of our past and our future. And we've evolved a brain that genetically provided us the ability to learn, to understand, and to adapt to our environment. We've evolved, it may seem stupid in some ways and simple, but our tongue and our thumb and our mouth have combined to allow us to develop a language. And oh my gosh, how that has horrendously improved our adaptability. We can construct very abstract and complex ideas. And we can read about what the ancients have said. And so we've been able to develop more complex machinery, ideas, inventions. Science has been astounding. This is all true. We've also evolved as a social species. And humans, this is a linchpin for us. Humans respond to pressure from other people to see the world, to perceive things in much the same way as other people who surround us do. Our inherited physiology, like the chimpanzees, makes us dependent on parents as infants and children. There are a few other species that have such a long period of childhood. Years of childhood. We start out pretty dumb, and we learn so much. We learn the language. We learn, most of us, not all, but to read and write. And we learn the horrendous complexities of human interactions. And so many of those complexities of human interactions had to do with niches. Niches, social little niches. I am at the same time, I am a son, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm retired now, but I've been a psychologist. I'm retired now, I'm of a certain age. All of these provide niches. And our society says, in each of these niches, here's what you should do and here's what you shouldn't do. You know, you're not supposed to shoot your kid because he's crying. You're not supposed to smack him around all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Part of the time.
But here's what you should do. You should provide it goes on and on and on. And we grow, and eventually all of it becomes habit. Now we cheat a lot on many of the things that we're supposed to do. It's true. And part of the cheating comes from the fact that I'm both a father, but I'm also in a career, and I'm also, I have so many selves. We have so many selves, different selves. And even though our brain is powerful, even though that's true, we're not able to keep more than a few of those cells at a time in focus. Maybe 3, maybe 4, in focus at the same moment, so that we have little boxes and we go from one to another. And as a business person, we may be mean-spirited and aggressive and competitive and fire people, like Trump, like us.
I prefer prison for him.
And as a family person, we're not going to fire our son or daughter and kick them out. We go from one to another in little boxes, and yet, again, we can't keep them all in mind. We don't have that ability. Furthermore, our knowledge base has become so fantastic. Boy, in science, our knowledge base, how many thousands of times has it increased in the past 100 years? Thousands upon thousands of times. Brain physiology, oh my gosh. I think that's increased 1,000-fold in about the past 10 years. It's huge increase. And none of us can keep up with that. If we're a specialist in brain physiology, we may know 70%. If you're not that acute specialist, you know a few things about it. And what do? Somehow we're able to survive because what we do is we can, if we really need to know something, we can read it in a book perhaps, or go to a specialist. So this infinitely complex world we deal with by filtering out most of the complexity and just focusing on a few things at a time. We are limited. We're really limited, even though, as a species, we're more advanced than any other the earth has ever created. Horrendously advanced. There's another side to these things too, and that is there's another limit on brain power. When we become very, very ill, physically or mentally, we lose our civilized personas. Many of our important cells will melt away and melt away rapidly. They fade. And, husband, father, psychologist, whatever, that can be erased from you within minutes and easily. And I'll give a brief description again because I presented this before. From my personal experience, a few years ago, I was on vacation with Kathy in Spain. Evelyn was with us for a while. and a good friend of mine. But on that vacation, I picked up a bug. And we were in northern Spain in the mountains. Snow had just begun to fly. We were at a place where they were ready to close down, but it was a great place in the mountains way off a main road. And I got a virus and I started coughing up phlegm and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. And for nights I couldn't sleep. And I was taking medication. Eventually I went to a doctor and got some medication. But for night after night, I couldn't sleep. If I tried to, I would start coughing right away. I had to be sitting up all the time. And I went crazy. I began having images in my mind. And some of them were just horrible. So one wasn't. It was just, I can remember it clearly. It was this post that was kind of golden and a gray background with, at any rate, and another was faces that were torn and jagged and bloody. And at that time, I cared for nothing. My wife was there, she was caring for me. I didn't care a whit about her. I couldn't think about my son, anything. I could only think about trying to breathe and stay alive. I had lost all of my cells nearly. I didn't want to. I couldn't focus on anything else. I was at a primitive state. And that can happen to any one of you, and probably will, near an end point. Survival. And we become human or less than human. I don't know how to put that. But it is a very primitive side. But it's a significant part of who we are when the learned, civilized parts are torn away. The complicated functioning of our inner selves that control so much of our life. Yet we mostly remain unaware of how fragile those inner selves really are. Let's take another look at another direction. Species imperatives. Here we come to kind of the yin and yang of life itself. And this is something that the social sciences is bedrock for the social sciences. On the one hand, we are social creatures conforming in many ways, so conforming, and yet offset by a developing consciousness of our ability to think abstractly and about ourselves and the different roles that we play in life. This is the yin and yang of it. We have our individuality, and we need to be different. We need to see ourselves as somehow special, as different from others. But equally important is our desire to be a part of a group, to fit in, to be accepted and honored. And so many of us throughout life, right now, as a matter of fact, we fake a lot. We don't realize we're doing it, but we do it. We have to do it. We fake a lot because we want to be honored and cared for by the group. We don't let people know our secret thoughts. Most of us. Freud talked about it, oh my gosh, it's been common knowledge for a long, long time. And psychologists are forever could I say millions of studies? It is. Millions of studies of the depths to which we deceive ourselves and pretend. So, to honor ourselves and our separateness and our private beliefs, and yet to be part of the humankind, and not alienate others, this is a conflict that's a continual source of strain. And these, what I've been talking about, are the building blocks that humanists and atheists use in erecting their philosophy of life. These aren't always spelled out, enunciated. And there are different nuances, yes, but they tend to be similar in nature. So, a starting point for my belief system, the humanist view, is that the universe has not provided any certain meaning to existence. There is no meaning. There is no meaning. This is a humanist talking now, and a scientist. There is no meaning to life or death or human beings. The universe exists. It's complex beyond our imagination, beyond our understanding. No certain truth exists as to why the universe exists or why we're in it. There's no certain truth of why we're here and why we're in it. There's no evidence that we can point to. So, there's no certain answer to, no meaning to life or death. Nevertheless, as humans, we need to create answer systems, create meanings in a pretty chaotic world. We try and see the order, and we do, but there's a hell of a lot of chaos out there. We're like a ship in a terrible storm that has no harbor, no anchorage, and we must find some kind of safety or we fear destruction. We're a species that demands answers. We demand to know what will happen to us after we die. Even if the justification is unreal, if it's a myth, if others believe it, we often submit and agree as a species. That's what we often do. If others believe it, we submit, because we have group support then. We are programmed to believe that group agreement is tantamount to truth. Group agreement, tantamount to truth, even though our logic tells us that that's not valid reasoning. The species imperative pushes us in that direction, though. So, from the beginning of awareness, one of the things that's unreal, from the beginning of awareness, most of our species insisted that humans must be super important. We must be the center. God favors us somehow, or we just are. And because we're so important, we need to believe that somehow we can overcome death too. Christians, Muslims, pagans who believed in the ancient Norse gods, most of the spiritualists of the world, even Buddhists who don't believe in a god, all believe that somehow they can overcome death. For the Buddhists, of course, it's, hey, you come back again. Hi. Hi. Not a Buddhist, but one who believes you can come back again.
Absolutely.
Yes. Some kind of afterlife. For a humanist, I say no, nada, absolutely not. Atheists and humanists do not believe that to the universe we are super important. As individuals, we are one among billions of our kind. As sentient beings, those that have feelings, can feel pain and so forth, we're one among trillions. And as individuals, we wink out rapidly, we die. In a few short years, I won't be here. In a few years after, you won't be here either. A part of me is just astounded with that idea. I know it sounds absurd, intellectually and logically, but I do not want to wink out. I stare at the world from my shell and think that I do not want to lose all possibility of continued consciousness right now. As absurd as I know it is, at some awareness level, it seems impossible to me that I will no longer be present. I know that's screwy. I know that's not logical. I know it. But there is a part of me that just says, that can't be. I don't want it to be. Who can see the beauty of that specific mountain stream coming down? The cool water around the rocks. Who can care for my son? Who can care for my wife? And of course instruct them along the way, as I must do, as I can. It's illogical, but a secret part of me fears loss of consciousness, to be gone, to lose all memory, all awareness, all life forever. It will happen, but that to me is a dreaded fate. As we were driving to Myrtle Beach, I made a little imaginative leap and said, gee, wouldn't it be fine? You know, we're learning how to estimate what your emotions are by doing brain scan. We can even tell before you speak what the words are going to be. We can know a lot about your mind. Gee, maybe in a few years they'll be able to capture all of my mind and put it in some robotic brain. And I was saying, you know, I could be on the shelf and say, Kathy, remember.
Unplug the USB port. On out.
She wants a mute button. It gives you
and maybe when she winked out, she could be on the shelf beside me. Oh, God.
Yes. What a joy to look forward to. There is the USB port.
In some ways, I wish I could submit to the supreme narcissism. And it is supreme narcissism. That sense of importance, that self-importance. And I wish I could deceive myself. And I wonder if many, many, many of our human species have that same sense of panic, of fright, of contemplating the death. I think that many of those who even believe who do believe in an afterlife through Christ, through whatever, I think many still wonder at some point in time if they've been deluded by the pressure of popular beliefs, by those around them. And I can ask you, what more momentous issue could we humans conjure up? What more momentous issue could we conjure up than there is a life after death? We are masters at believing the impossible, the unreal, the unproven. We do so much of that. In the distant past, many philosophers, and more recently, many of our finest psychologists, have suggested that as a species we evolved without a need for realistic answers. We didn't have to have those. As long as most of the village or the tribe believed in an idea, we felt some pressure to accept it. And we could survive. And perhaps accepting the unbelievable, a God or whatever, it might even help us to feel less anxious. If we believed that some powerful, unseen entity was watching over us, even giving us a chance for life after death. If that belief doesn't threaten the survival of the species, the truth doesn't matter. But what if the village elders are deceived? What if there is no God? No meaning of life handed down from a great, unseen, unknowable, powerful God. The answer for humanists is that we must create our own belief system. Our own values, we must create them. Not from others, but we must create them. No higher authority can do it. We must do it for ourselves. The Unitarian Universalists have provided one guideline, and it's a pretty good one. From my point of view it is. But create your own belief system, and it's like having a suit made to order. It fits better. Decide for yourself. If it's not yours, it does not help you unless in the dark of night you can say, I know there are no absolutes, no forever true answers, but here's what I have constructed for myself. I know there are no answers about why my own life, my own death, my own memories, my own loves count. Perhaps with hesitation, you say, but still, at this moment, I will believe. This is where I make my stand. I have to believe in something. I have to have some anchors. I can't be that ship in the storm that's just blown hither. I have to make the answers. So here are the answers for me alone. The ones that I have constructed, the garden that I planted in the soil. Yes, I matter very little to the universe. I am smaller than an atom in the whole of this continent. In 3 million years, which is really a very small amount of time to the universe, I will have contributed so little that it is useless to even try and count. It's useless to contemplate. I have contributed so little. Almost certainly, in 3 million years, our species will have vanished. Maybe to the good of the universe. But the universe doesn't care. So there's no good or bad. Omar Khayyam, oh boy, I love this quote. The worldly hope men set their hearts upon turns ashes, or it prospers and anon. Like snow upon the desert's dusty face, lighting a little hour or two is gone. Like snow, it's gone. And that's for you and me. In some ways rotten, huh? So, what right now can I say? I must stand up for something, for myself alone. And I need a path, an outline. And my beliefs are as follows. Love, connections, compassion are of primary import. This is for me. I think for most humanists, maybe not all, but I think for most. Again, you have to construct your own. Love, connections, compassion are primary import. The heart is warmed. It is part of our species. For me, caring is the elixir of life. It is like food and water, an essential part of my being. I feel fulfilled in giving and in receiving. I must give. Caring eases my pain and it eases the pain of others. And not just humans. Betsy says in animals too. They're sentient. Perhaps should be as important as we are. They suffer. They feel pain. Caring does bring with it sadness, potential sadness. It does cause grief to realize that a friend or a love mate has died. Boy, we shared the good times, and that person will not come again. Those good times with that person will only exist in memory that begins to fade. If the person who dear to me has committed suicide, it matters to me, but not to the universe. And by the way, the people whom I've known who have committed suicide, I think every one of them had more kindness than most. Psychologists say those who commit suicide are frequently, or most often, those who turn aggression inward instead of picking at others and being angry and rageful and making others suffer. They turn it inward. I can remember I was going to give this big event at a college on Martin Luther King Day, and I had it all planned, except that my planning, I'm kind of ADHD, was at the last minute for setting up the sound system. And here I am an hour beforehand and I couldn't understand how it worked. And a man came up and said, "Gee, you're having problems there, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Maybe I can help you." And he spent half an hour setting up the sound system. He was so kind. He was so nice. 3 weeks later, he committed suicide. The kind ones, the kindest ones. Ernest Hemingway said it best. The good die young. And it's often true. The good die young. So, for me, I place special honor to those good ones and to those who commit suicide. And They take choice in their own hands when life seems to be too hurtful or senseless. But you know, the other side of that is that anyone who takes their own life, it reminds us of our own mortality. And forever, when someone dies that you're close to, do not ask for whom the bell tolls for thee. It reminds you that your time will come. Another aspect of my belief system: work, action, and projects with heart. Herein lies creation, change, movement for me. If I do not find work that has heart, I weaken, I do, and I feel impoverished, I feel impotent. And I begin to suffer. I begin to feel depression. I need to have projects with heart. Now, all my life I've been doing multiple things and I've had projects with heart. But at my age, I'm winding down too, and I'm not able to do many of the things that I could do. You know, a garden has some heart for me, but it's not quite as meaningful as other projects. I don't know that this applies to other people, but just maybe it has some universal appeal. Many Buddhists will say, without work, one dies. I agree, but it must be work with heart, for me. I think it's like an electric current. Energy flows easily, seemingly without effort, when I'm working creatively. Oh, it's fun. It's a joy. Some of that is writing. Writing this brought some real joy for me. You know, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd be at night, and I'd have a dream about something that I could put in here. It really had passion and heart. I can enjoy being alive when I'm creating. Countering hate and greed is a must for me. I'm relatively wealthy. I'm not hugely wealthy, but I am. I have few needs, and I like to give to others. But blocking aggression is foremost for me. I dissent from killing of man or animals, especially sentient creatures. Maybe bugs are okay, they're not sentient. The Buddhists would say, no, bugs are. But at least the sentient creatures. The sentients feel pain. And herein lies purpose. Pain can also be produced, from my point of view, by insensitive remarks. And I make them at times, I know I do. You know, it's that aggression turned outward, and it comes out. I wish it didn't, but it does. I've tried to curtail it, at least in the last 30 years or so, maybe most of my life. But I can't completely. And I do give pain to others at times. Anger comes up, and I can rage for a while. Another, for me, pleasures of the body and mind. This is a kind of narcissism I not only allow myself, but as long as it hurts no other. I can revel in the agreeable emotions. This combats depression. It brings a kind of emotional joy that combats depression. And it's renewing. That's Listening to my special music, oh boy, yes. Seeing beauty in nature, the mountain stream, the mountains, and God, I have such a gorgeous view from our house. Massaging of my skin. These are some of my delights. Foods with special sauces and spices that gratify and can enchant my palate. I'm definitely not an ascetic. I'm not telling you that you should follow me. Believe me, I'm not. But I'm telling you, find your own system. And when you find it, write it down somehow. At least outline it. So that you can turn to it when bad days come, and they will come. Another point for me, keep searching for new truths. They're limited truths. I don't know why this is, but it certainly many depth psychologists will say this. Somehow when you discover something new, a new insight, a new way of ordering things, it brings a kind of pleasure to you. And it does. At least for me. And I'm not sure that that applies to others, but I think it applies to many others. A new way of ordering it fulfills something inside. I know it's always limited and it's specific, and it lacks that grandiosity, but still. And understanding one small part of the apparent chaos of this infinitely complex universe, it confers a sense of satisfaction. For me at least, when our species is gone from the universe, and it will, we're not going to be around forever. When it's gone, no one will know or care that in one very minute and bounded part of the planet, I attempted to harm few and aided some of our kind. It won't matter. It won't matter. And it takes a special kind of strength to say, even though it doesn't matter, this is where I stand. It takes a special kind of strength to overcome that false narcissistic sense that we are powerful and important and that we matter. We may matter for a minute amount of time, a very bounded, unimportant amount of time. But to someone else it may matter for that minute amount of time. Exceptionally limited accomplishments, like snow upon the desert's dusty face. Still, in the here and now, to a very few others, we may make a limited difference. Kindness can matter for a brief moment in time. It takes a kind of strength to move ahead in the face of knowledge that to the universe there is no meaning, no value. The universe is mindless. This is what I think. Yet if we are aware of our finiteness and choose to say, here I stand, here are my values, I think it displays a kind of nobility. And I talked about honorable choices, and I think I'm talking now about honorable choices. So, keep searching for those new limited truths. There's a beauty in knowledge. Keep helping others. even if most of the people that surround me insist that they can live forever in an afterlife, insist that they are not impotent and do count in the long run, I can still silently say no to me. I don't want to say that to them. I don't want to say that to them. If they have something that helps them through, please use it. And I can still act and take a stand against narcissistic aggression and greed. Some might wonder if this is a nihilistic point of view, you know, a kind of ultimately negative point of view. I don't think it is. I don't think it's depressing or nihilistic. I would say just the opposite. To stand for positives, even when it makes no difference, is in my mind a bold and a courageous place to be. The great social philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called this kind of person the Übermensch, the Superman. So I believe in a meaningless, a godless universe, but I do not stand for denigrating others who do not share my views. I may have only a few people who face life in the same manner that I do. Still, those others who must deny their impotence absolutely deserve compassion too. Let me have the courage to live and die and yet face a stern reality with my limited awareness and limited brain power and my species-dictated narcissism. I will struggle, and it is a struggle, to keep my values in an uncertain universe that cares little what in this place, in this time, one human cares about. May I be content that it is so, and yet right now, here I stand. And thank you for the honor of allowing me to talk to you and telling you where I stand.